What's going on, guys? Welcome back to an episode of Fishing with Flair. Today I'm not doing any fishing, although it is very nice outside and I should be doing some bass fishing. I had just a whole bunch of business stuff to do, but I had an hour to kill, and so I figured why not film a video to teach you guys some tips that I know on how to catch more fish. So I posted my first pond fishing video like a week or two ago, and you guys loved it. You guys absolutely loved it, and I'm definitely gonna make some more because it seems like it really suits your guys' style, is from fishing from the bank. And so I figured why not go over my top 5 pond fishing baits, since I do all the top 5 spring, summer, fall, winter baits for bass fishing that's directed more towards being on a boat and fishing large lakes and reservoirs. I'm gonna wait for this airplane to fly by. All right, back to what I was saying. So I'm gonna go over my top 5 pond fishing baits. So I'm gonna go over the top 5 lures, and then I'm actually gonna go into the rod and reel setups that I use for each one of the baits. And that way, once you guys get the baits, you guys have a better idea of, you know, the rod, the reel, the gear ratio, the line that I would use for that particular presentation. Before I start, I wanna clear one thing up. Just because you're fishing a pond does not mean you can't use the lures you see me using when I'm fishing on my boat on a lake. Pond fishing is not that much different than actual lake fishing. There's only a few things that I keep in mind when I know I'm gonna be going and fishing a pond versus fishing a lake, and honestly that is just depth. Knowing that ponds are probably no deeper than 10-15 feet, and when I'm fishing a lake, you know, they could be upwards of 100 feet deep. And so that's how I narrow down my bait selection. But when it comes to selecting baits, I fish the same lures in ponds that I do in lakes. So I'll start off with my most favorite lure. You guys know that is a topwater frog. That is my frog of choice. It is a Spro poppin' frog. I get a lot of questions about the poppin' frog. When should you use a popping versus a regular? I don't know. I just like using the popping. You really just need to let the fish tell you. People can come up with a whole bunch of explanations why a popper is good, why it's bad, why a regular frog's good, when it works better, when it doesn't work better. And generally that's because, like, if it's windy outside, you might want a popper to make a little bit extra disturbance, but I throw a popping frog 95% of the time. It just catches fish. Like I said, I'm gonna quickly go through the baits and then I'll go over the rod reel line selection. My number 2 favorite bait is a topwater walking bait. This could also be substituted for a popper. So like right here, this is a topwater walking spook, but topwater like poppers, splash baits, anything like that. Anything that's on top of the surface that walks, pops, makes any type of commotion. These baits work really well in ponds. My third bait of choice, this is a moving bait. My personal favorite is a chatterbait. This one here is a black and blue NewTek Blitz Crazy Jig in 1/2 ounce. This could also be substituted for a spinnerbait or a square bill. The reason why I went with the chatterbait is because oftentimes when I'm fishing ponds, there's a lot of scum, especially in the summer times, there's a lot of grass, and square bills and lipless crankbaits don't really do all that well. So it also just depends on the time of year that you're fishing, but you guys know I love throwing the chatterbait, so that's definitely gonna be in my arsenal when I'm going to fish a pond. My 4th favorite bait, this is one that you will slow down, and that is a weightless Senko. You guys have seen the pond fishing video I put up. I threw a frog in a Senko and that's what caught the fish. This could be substituted for a Texas rig. The reason why I like throwing a weightless Senko is because most of the time there's just not a lot of big waves when you're fishing a small body of water. Even if it's windy outside, you know, usually the water's still pretty calm even if it's windy, so I like to throw the weightless presentation. But if you're on a bigger pond, maybe a small lake, and it is windy and the waves are going and a weightless bait just doesn't work, it doesn't get down to the bottom, that's when you add a weight. So you could fish a weighted Senko, a weighted Texas rig. You could also fish a curly tail worm, a beaver, anything like that. But for some reason, a weightless Senko just does really well in ponds. My 5th and final presentation is a finesse bait. This could be a shaky head, it could be a drop shot. My personal favorite is a Ned Rig. And for those of you guys who don't know what a Ned Rig is, you guys are gonna have to look it up. Fluke Master put a video out about 2 weeks ago, I believe. You can go check that out if you don't know how to fish a Ned Rig. It's just a little small finesse bait that Z-Man makes. I don't know why there's so many airplanes flying around. All right, back to what I was saying is Z-Man makes a little finesse bait, and it is it's called the TRD. It goes on a mushroom head, and it's called a Ned Rig. And for some reason, this bait catches just tons of fish. It's not gonna usually catch the size. So if you're looking for that trophy 4 or 5 pound bass, I'd stay away from this presentation. But if you're fishing a new pond and you wanna see if there's any fish in the lake, if you don't have an eye bobber to see if you have any fish in that pond, then pick up something finesse like a Ned Rig and just see if you can snag a few small ones. That way you at least know there's fish in there, and then maybe go to a different bait like a big Senko to catch that big bass. So now that I've talked about my 5 favorite pond baits, I'm gonna go in a little bit more in depth within the baits and the rod, the reel, the line setup that I like to use. So the first one I talked about was the frog, and like I said, I like to use a popping frog. That doesn't mean you have to use a popping frog. I see people use normal frogs and catch just as many fish as I do. It's just personal preference. It's one of those things that just gives me confidence. I've used a popping frog since I was a small kid. That was my favorite frog when I was like, you know, 8 and 10 years old, and I've just used it ever since. For colors, I like to stick natural. A big thing for pond fishing for me is match the hatch. So if you see any frogs, tadpoles swimming around, you definitely want to take a note on what color they are, whether they're dark or light, natural color, you know, greens, that type of stuff. A good go-to is something like this, some greens, some browns, black also works really well. The rod setup I have on this one is a Castaway Tyrannus. This is a 7.3 heavy. I've been using this since the beginning of this year and I am very impressed with it. Super lightweight and it's only like $100. Plus, if you use promo code AF2016, you get 20% off your entire Castaway rod purchase. So really, you're only talking an $80 rod and it works phenomenal. For the reel, I like a 7.5-to-1 gear ratio, whatever reel brand your favorite preference. Jeez. Whatever your favorite brand of reel is, I like a fast gear ratio, so 7-to-1 or faster. And then for line, I like 50 to 65 pound Seaguar Smackdown braid. Some of you guys might be thinking that's a little overkill, especially fishing in ponds, but you guys know as well as I do, ponds can have very large bass, they can have thick cover, pads, that type of stuff. So I like 50 to 65 pound Seaguar Smackdown tournament braid. The second lure I talked about was a topwater walking bait or a popper. I just love fishing topwater baits in general, and for some reason, pond fish just love topwater spooks, topwater poppers, even buzz baits. You guys know I love throwing buzz baits. For some reason, I just haven't had a ton of luck on buzz baits in ponds. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if the fish don't like it, the ponds that I'm fishing at. I would not discourage you from trying a buzz bait, but for some reason, a topwater spook just seems to be working a little bit better. As far as colors go, I like white based, whether that's sexy shad, bone, white, chrome will work too if it's a little bit sunny. If it's bright skies, you might want to use a chrome colored one. For a rod, you want a short rod. This one here is a Castaway Invicta. Now this is their high-end rod that they've got, and it is a Signature Series topwater rod. So it's 6'6" in length. It's got a nice fast action to really walk that bait side to side. Extremely lightweight. This thing is like a feather in my hand. I absolutely love it. For a reel, I like a fast speed reel. It's like a 7-to-1 or higher. This one here is a 7.5-to-1, and that's because all you're doing when you're walking a bait is you're walking it and you're picking the slack up with your reel. So the quicker that you can pick the slack up, the better off you are. And then for line, this guy actually, I got 40-pound Seaguar Smackdown tournament braid. You could go down to 30, but the thing with the Seaguar line, the reason why I love their tournament braid is because it's so much thinner than your traditional braid. And so if you watched my videos last year, I talked about using 30-pound braid, 30-pound braid, 30-pound braid, because it's a really versatile line. Well, when I got my order of Seaguar in, I realized the 30-pound braided line is more like a 20-pound, and the 40 is more like a 30, and the 50 is more like a 40. And so for me, I would rather go to a 40-pound knowing I have that much more strength and that much more power in my hands with the same diameter as close to like 30-pound normal braid. Not saying you couldn't go to 20-pound or 30-pound, but I try to get the heaviest line that I can possibly get away with. This just ensures that you don't have any break-offs. You know, if you're like John B and probably cast up in trees a lot, if you have 40-pound braid, you can literally rip branches off. That way you're not losing as many baits. And it just seems to work well because the bigger diameter line, it'll float more than the thin diameter, and when you're fishing a topwater bait, it'll help you walk your bait a little bit better. The third bait that I mentioned was a Chatterbait. This is a NewTek Lures Blitz Crazy Jig in 1/2 ounce black and blue with a little gambler swim bait on it. As far as colors go, if it's dirty water, you want to stick to something like this that's like black and blue. If it's a little bit clear, you might want to go to a green pumpkin, especially if there's bluegill swimming around. If you guys can see bluegill swimming around the pond, you want to go to that green pumpkin color. Or if there's crappie or shad, then you want to go to a white or a white and chartreuse or like a sexy shad color. Again, this can be substituted for a spinnerbait if you have more confidence with a spinnerbait, or you could fish like a square bill or a lipless crankbait. It just depends on the time of year. For now, you know, summertime, springtime, it's really hard to beat a chatterbait. If you don't have any grass, I would recommend going to a square bill. If you've got wood, I would recommend going to a square bill, bumping it up against there. But if you got grass, a lot like I do, then you want to stick to like a bladed jig, something that'll kind of get through the cover a little bit easier than a square bill. For the rod, I've got a Castaway Skeleton. This is last year's model of their skeletons, and this is actually a shallow crankbait rod, 7'2" in length. It's a medium heavy with a moderate action. Whenever you're fishing chatterbaits, you almost want a crankbait rod. You want something a little bit stiffer than a crankbait rod just because you got a little bit bigger hook than normal crankbaits. And this one's actually designed for big, like 2.5 like square bills, like the big square bills. And I just fell in love with this rod for chatterbaits. I can cast really well at 7'2", so you get a really long cast out of it, and it just seems to suit my style of fishing a chatterbait. But for you guys at home that don't have this specific rod, I would go 6'10" to 7'2". That's the length that I would stick to for chatterbait fishing. You want to go with a medium to a medium heavy. For those, if you're getting a fast action rod, like let's say your Bass Pro Shops, wherever you're buying, doesn't have a moderate rod, you want to go with a medium. But if you can find a medium heavy moderate action, that is the chatterbait rod you want to buy. For the reel, I like kind of a medium medium speed, like a 6.4 to 6.8 to 1 gear ratio, nothing too fast, but nothing too slow. That way, if it gets caught up in the grass, you can kind of rip it free, burn it back, but you also don't want to be fishing it too fast to the point where those fish can't chase it down. Then for line, I like 17-pound Seaguar and VizX fluorocarbon. I tried 15-pound and 14-pound earlier this year, and it worked well, but especially if we're fishing ponds, you're normally fishing, you know, 6 feet and less. The heavier line that you have, the larger the diameter, which keeps your bait higher up in the water column, so you're not dragging against all the muck on the bottom and getting it hung up. Especially because chatterbaits catch big fish, I like to have that 17-pound just in case I hook into a giant. The fourth lure of choice was a weightless Senko, and like I said earlier, this is basically your Texas rig rod. So you could put a weight on it, you can put a tungsten weight, lead weight, whatever you want. You can fish a ribbon tail, like a brush hog if you want. Those baits work really well. For me personally, a weightless Senko just seems to kill it. But again, like I said, if it's super windy, you probably don't want to throw something weightless. If it's windy like it is today, you don't want to throw a weightless bait, then you need to add a weight. For colors, I always go natural. Green pumpkins, watermelons. If the water's dirty, maybe a black with red flake, something like that. But you want to go with natural. In ponds, you normally want to go natural colors. The rod I have on this one is a 7-foot mag heavy. This is the rod that I used in that pond fishing video that I caught fish on. This is the rod that I was using in my last video where I was fishing Senkos and frogs. This was the rod I was using, and you could probably go to like a medium heavy. You probably don't need a mag heavy for fishing weightless Senkos, but it seems to work just fine. And you know, I try to use the heaviest rod that I can get away with. Again, just in case you catch that big fish, you don't want to have too light of line or too light of a rod to the point where you're gonna miss a hook set and can't get that fish to the bank or to the boat. As far as reels, I like something fast, 7 to 1 or higher. I actually use 8.3 to 1 a lot, and the reason being is because when you're fishing a Senko or a Texas rig, you're basically casting it out there and you're using your rod to work it back, and then you're just picking the slack up with your reel. So the faster they reel, the quicker you can get it back to the boat, the quicker you can make another cast, which means you're making more casts throughout the day, which means you have the potential to catch more fish. The line, I like 15 to 17-pound fluorocarbon. If you're fishing any type of cover, like let's say you've got a weight on here and you're Texas rig fishing and you're flipping a brush hog into a bush, I would want 17-pound fluoro. For me, fishing a weightless bait, where you're just fishing it basically in open water, maybe around some scum, 15-pound Seaguar and VizX fluorocarbon seems to do just fine. You could also use braided line. You don't have to use fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon is just what I had on my reel, but if I was gonna use braid, I'd probably use 30 to 40-pound braid. Last but not least, this is my finesse setup. I don't really like finesse fishing very much, but it flat out catches fish. If you guys watch John B's videos, he's a great finesse fisherman. Every time I fish with him, he's always breaking out the spinning rod, and that's why he seems to catch a lot of fish a lot of time. They may not be giants, some fish are, some fish aren't, but the thing about finesse fishing is you just get a lot more bites. For my finesse fishing choice was the Ned Rig, and it's just a small little finesse bait. You could also throw a drop shot. John B loves the drop shot. I'm not a fan of the drop shot, but it's just personal preference. Whatever you got confidence in, and if you guys don't have any confidence in it, like you haven't used it before, then just go try them all. Try them all until you're like, oh, I kind of like this bait, and then stick with that one. So go with a shaky head or a Ned Rig, anything just finesse. And when I would use this is when I can't get bit on anything else, or if I'm trying a brand new pond. The one video where I said I was sneaking into ponds, where I just tried new, I went on Google Maps and found some bodies of water to sneak in there. The first bait, I didn't show it on camera, the first bait that I picked up was this guy, just to see if there were any fish. I caught a few dinks and then picked up the Senko to hook into a few bigger largemouth. The rod that I like for this one, you can use any spinning rod really. I'm not really particular on spinning rods. I try to use relatable gear. I can have 25 rods that retail at $300 a piece, and I could just be looking all flashy, using my fancy gear, but I don't like doing that because that's not relatable for you guys. You guys see me with all this fancy gear and you think, oh man, he's spoiled, he's got all these sponsors, I don't want to watch him because he's not going to teach me anything that's relatable. So I like to use these price-effective gear, and then that way I can teach you guys a little bit better. So this is the Castaway Tyrannus. It's a 7-foot rod, medium to medium heavy. This one's actually a medium heavy, which is kind of stiff. I like actually throwing flukes on this one, but you could definitely go to a medium light, whatever your personal preference is. Spinning gear is really not all that important when it comes to like the rod and stuff. You just want something that's nice and soft. The reel, I don't even know. As far as the reel, just get whatever price point reel that you can afford. I don't really have any favorite brands or anything like that. And then for a line, if you're using Seaguar Smackdown braid, I would recommend 20-pound. If you're not using Seaguar Smackdown braid, I'd recommend 15. Again, like I said, the diameter of Seaguar is a lot thinner than normal braid, or the braid that I've used in the past. I could be wrong with normal braid, but 15 to 20-pound braid, I always use braid on spinning gear. I never use straight fluorocarbon. And the reason why is just because it twists up, it kinks up, and you don't get as much feel, as much sensitivity, anything like that. And then I'll tie about like a 4 to 5 foot fluorocarbon leader, and that fluorocarbon leader is usually like 8 pounds. All right, guys, so I'm gonna end the video here because it's probably gone on way too long. Hopefully I taught you you guys something. And again, I just want to go over again that when you see me fishing on a boat, you know, on a big lake or reservoir, don't think that the techniques and stuff that I'm teaching you in that video is not applicable to small ponds. Ponds and lakes are really not all that much different. A bass is a bass is a bass. They bite the same lures, they act the same, they react the same. So don't be intimidated just because I'm fishing on a boat sometimes. That's it for today's episode, guys. If you learned something, leave a like, leave a comment, make sure you subscribe for more videos. Got some more fishing content coming. Thanks for watching.